Hi, it's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keough, author of the book Dating a Widower, and today we are going to talk about why you need to scatter the ashes or get rid of the clothes and basically say goodbye to your late spouse, because there are many widows and widowers out there who are not saying goodbye to their late spouse, and that is stopping them from moving forward not only with love but with life itself. So, what got me thinking about this was, of all things, was the death of Queen Elizabeth. She recently died, and it was interesting for anyone paying attention to it. She was, for those who don't know what she was the Queen of the United Kingdom and other Commonwealth areas from 1952 until her death this year, so 2022. So basically, for 70 years. She was, the queen, and for most people, she was the only queen that they had ever known. She's one of the longest living monarchs in the history of the world. So 70 years. And she was very adored and very loved and things like that. And it was interesting when she died. Not only was it big news just because, she was the queen and things like that, but it was interesting all the pageantry and all of the process and all of the procedures around her death. Like they put her coffin out, and people waited in line, I believe, for up to 24 hours to pay their respects to the queen. And then they had this huge funeral, with this horse-drawn thing, and with the casket, and everybody's in these uniforms, and people are lining the streets, and the casket goes down to where they interred her body, and a big procession, big thing like that. And it was interesting. It got me thinking a little bit about just funerals and death and process and moving on. But it was also interesting, a lot of people out there where they were like, well, why does it need to have all this stuff? Why do we have all this why did you have all this pageantry? And I can't believe people would wait in line for 24 hours to see her, just to walk by her casket for 3 seconds, things like that. And I think it kind of shows. I guess what really struck me from this is that it was interesting that I think all this pageantry and stuff was needed because it gave the United Kingdom and other people who were mourning her loss a chance to say goodbye to the Queen, right? So again, whether they were standing in line all day just to walk by her casket for a second, or whether they were, on the road as this big funeral procession happened, all this stuff, all the things that they did with her body and things like that, gave her a moment, gave everybody a moment to pay their respects and to say goodbye. And so I bring that up because as I was thinking about this and reading some comments about it, it seems like recently too, I've had a lot of coaching sessions where the big issue has been the ashes on the mantle, right? The late wife died X number of years ago, and he still hasn't scattered the ashes. There's a big urn on there, or they're still in the house, and I don't want them in the house. I can't live in a house where these ashes are. And it made me just think how often, especially in our modern culture, we've lost a lot of the rituals and stuff around saying goodbye. And in fact, a lot of times, I have clients or have clients who are dating someone who really hasn't said goodbye to their late spouse. And maybe they had a memorial service or something like that, but they still have these ashes in the house, or the clothes are still in the closet and things like that. And it's like everything's just, I can't tell you how many people I talk to where it's like, yeah, I walk into the house and it's like, nothing's changed since she's died, and she's been dead for whatever, 4 years, 10 years, whatever. Nothing's changed. And we've kind of lost this ability to mourn and say goodbye to people. And instead we just kind of hold on to things, right? Whether it's actual remains like ashes or their personal things. And the issue is when we don't really formally say goodbye to people, when we can't have that moment where we can mourn them and grieve them and, have the whole process of, again, whatever it is, a memorial service, a funeral, whatever, we really lose the ability to kind of not only say goodbye, but we lose the ability to move forward, and for some people to even open their hearts, right? And because, and change is hard, change is messy, there's a lot of grief and stuff that goes into this. But when you aren't scattering the ashes or interning the ashes or giving them to somebody else, or or you're putting off the memorial service, for whatever reason, people aren't given the chance to say goodbye, and that stops us from moving forward because we're kind of stuck in this thing where we haven't done it. And I think, a lot of things are, it's like, well, I don't know why we do this or do, but, maybe again, I've heard trust me, I've heard all the excuses as to why we can't do it. And I know that COVID kind of messed things up a little bit. It was weird, like after COVID saying, yeah, his wife died during COVID and it's been a year and a half and he still hasn't had the memorial service and things like that. So I understand there's maybe some things out of our control, but I think for the most part we can control the having the memorial service, scattering the ashes and turning them, whatever it is that we need to do to formally say goodbye to people. And it's important because if we really want to move on with our lives, if we really want to, whether it's opening our heart to someone else or just finding that happiness and peace again and being content with life, we need to say goodbye to people. And so if you haven't figured out what to do with the ashes or something like that, you need to quit putting it off and figure out a solution. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, my wife didn't want her ashes scattered, or maybe there's a cultural thing where you display them, and okay, maybe she didn't want her ashes scattered, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to keep them in your house, right? You can intern them somewhere, you can give them to someone else, or again, as my opinion is you can always scatter them, because really, what is the late spouse going to do? Come back and get mad at you? I mean, but fine. You don't want to scatter them. There are other solutions out there, and I think once we have these ceremonies, whether it's scattering the ashes or the memorial service, you can fully actually grieve and go kind of through this process of actually saying goodbye. So I know I've talked a lot about ashes, but again, I can apply it to the clothes in the closet or the pictures on the wall or whatever it is. Whatever it is that's holding you back from formally saying goodbye and moving forward, you need to figure out a solution about what to do with these things. Because even if there's subtle reminders that you've lost someone and that this person is dead, they're holding you back from moving on. And you need, and just like the people of the United Kingdom, they kind of needed this pageantry and this big funeral and stuff to say goodbye to the Queen. Personally, we all need to do these there's things that we need to do. There's rituals and things that we need to do to fully say goodbye to someone. I know in my case it was all weird because my late wife died, and like 4 days later I'm having a funeral, and I'm just kind of like, whoa, what's going on? All these unanswered questions, and I mean it was just the shock, and still stuff was going on. But the funeral, as much as an awful affair that it was in a lot of ways for me, I just remember the church being full of people who were shocked, obviously, that my late wife died. But I remember the whole, it was giving them a chance to say goodbye. Even if, there were still questions around her suicide and why did she do this and a lot of shock. The funeral really gave people a chance just to kind of mourn her and do that. So what it comes down to is really looking at your life and deciding what is it that you really need to do to officially say goodbye to your late spouse? Do you need to clean out the closet, or do you need to take down the photos? Do you need to take off the ring? Do you need to scatter the ashes? Have the memorial service, do whatever it is to give you and others a chance to finally say goodbye. Because if you can't say goodbye, you're not going to be able to truly move forward. And whether that includes opening your heart to someone else or just adjusting to your new reality, it's not going to happen until you have that ability and that moment where you can do what it takes, to have that ritual, that pageantry to say goodbye to your late spouse. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower. Feel free to leave comments below. If you have if you want to share your own stories about saying goodbye, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to like this channel, subscribe to this channel so you can get notices next time a video comes up. If you want to schedule a coaching session with me, there is a link in the description where you can do that as well. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower. I'll see you next Wednesday.